Hey everybody, it's that one guy. I hope you've been enjoying The War Within. I know I sure have. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you've been finding it fun and enjoying your hero talents. They made their first pass through on some changes to the specs most recently, so I know a lot of you are probably hoping that this would be a Sunfury video, but I'm going to let that cool for a couple days just in case they make any additional changes to Sunfury, or if they tweak the stuff they've already implemented and maybe want it to look a little different, because I'd hate to make a video and then have it be outdated within the next hour, much like the video I already made. So we're going to talk about Spellslinger in this video, and like all my videos, I will link the address for Wowhead and for Icy Veins and for Mage Discord in the description below, because that's always the best place to go for your current updated information. They've already updated those pages with how those changes to Sunfury impact the rotation, so you can see what to expect on there as this nice friendly dwarf comes hopping through my screen. But I want to talk about my WeakAuras and my setup as well for Spellslinger. You really don't need any WeakAuras for Spellslinger Arcane. It is all incredibly passive, which isn't a bad thing. Spellslinger is still very fun. It's incredibly fun in AoE. Its only detriment right now is that it is currently simming 15% behind Sunfury. And in a game where it's all about doing damage and making things die faster, being 15% behind a different spec makes it feel like you're walking when they're running. So hopefully they tune those to be a lot closer together. They don't have to be equal, but at least close, because Spellslinger does offer a bit more defensive value than Sunfury does. So anyways, on the off chance maybe that you just want to play Spellslinger because the content doesn't matter if you have that extra damage, or they do tune them correctly and you want to know how to play it, we're going to try to address that today. As for my WeakAuras and my setup, in the last video I posted, a lot of people were saying, hey, your WeakAuras aren't loading. Well, these down here aren't WeakAuras. These are just action bars that you can get to in edit mode, right? They're action bar 5 and 7. I clearly should have numbered them out better and paid attention to what I was doing. But those are just action bars that you can resize. You can add how many rows there are. You can change it to be stacked instead of horizontal, right? You can shrink or add how many you need, or even, like I said, the size of them. So I just have these set as action bars because I like their flexibility and customizability. Not that a WeakAura is not, but that's just my preference, and then I build the WeakAuras around that. The reason I link Porum's WeakAuras is because his is pretty much a whole UI replacement, where it does have those icons and those abilities in his WeakAura pack, so you don't have to move around action bars and drop them in. The stuff that's in mine would mainly just then be, as we get back to it, no, I don't want to save those changes, these. Right, this is my clear casting. This is what I made Intuition now. I used to have it as an overhead image, but it was far too distracting. This is essentially a Spellslinger launch timer. It's more important for Frost, but again, if you just like to know that it's happening, you'll see this little bar fill up. That means your splinters have accumulated and are about to launch, and this indicator means that they've hit their target, right? They've done their damage, and this is obviously the tracker. You don't have to pay attention to any of it. It doesn't impact your rotation or your gameplay as Spellslinger Arcane. It's just maybe visual feedback if you'd like to know. And if you preferred the overhead indicator for Intuition, it's still in the pack. You just have to go set its load, uncheck the box where it says never. But that's it for this. The only other thing I learned from last time is someone suggested, hey, you should use the little details thing that says what buttons you pushed. It makes it easier to track along with the slow motion. So I'm going to have that in there today so you can see all the wrong buttons I push and when. And hopefully I do them in the right order. So then let's talk about the talents for Spellslinger. The changes really, as I'm going to explain them, really just how they compare to Sunfury, is it looks very similar. As you see it changing and loading out, it looks very similar to what Sunfury would be, with two exceptions, and that is Orb Barrage and High Voltage instead of 2 points in Prodigious Savant. Sunfury has a lot of passive ways, a passive way in addition to the tier set to get back charges, so you don't need that help, whereas Spellslinger doesn't have any built-in mechanics aside from Spellfrost Teachings, which isn't something you could really rely on to get charges back, so you want to have just a little bit of extra help in building back those arcane charges, because you're going to be spending them every time you get Nether Precision. The difference then in AoE is two changes. Consortium's Bauble goes into Arcane Cleave, and Energized Familiar goes into Charged Orb. That's it as far as the changes for the spec side of Arcane from single target to AoE for Spellslinger, so it's pretty nice because it's going to play pretty similarly whichever one you're doing. As far as Spellslinger's talents, the main thing Spellslinger's built around is splinters, right? They changed them so that they're purple, and their flight path is pretty cool. It'd be a little better if they were a bit more distinguishable from just you firing off missiles, which is part of the reason why I put that WeakAuras there, so that you know that they're happening. But it's still kind of cool. I think one of the coolest parts of Spellslinger is a talent I'll get to in a little bit. But basically, every time you consume another precision, you're firing off 2 splinters. And with the way that you're going to play Spellslinger, you're going to essentially be firing off 6 splinters every set of clear casting in single target. I'll tell you why in a second. This just means that when you surge, you're going to conjure 8 splinters, which is relevant because that means you'll automatically have a splinter storm when you surge, and that you will be generating twice as many splinters, right? So during your surge windows, which line up with touch, you'll be generating a whole heck of a lot more splinters. This is just a nice little cleave talent, right? After someone gets hit with orb, it's going to damage nearby enemies, so helpful in single target, a lot more nice and impactful in AoE. This just means that your orb will generate splinters for you, and it's increased. Again, that ties into an ability a little lower down on the tree. 3 choice nodes all in a row. This would buff Supernova, right? Meaning you have another button you have to press, and you can see that in Wowhead. If you want to play with that one, you can see how that impacts your rotation. Or this just means whenever your splinters are recalled to be part of a splinter storm, they will also explode and do a little bit of damage. Just a nice little passive. Some awesome defensive options here, either a bigger barrier based on how much health you're missing, or 5% extra DR and an extra clone when you do mirror images. Both really good defensive options for Spellslinger, much better than what Sunfury has. Slippery slinging versus look again. If we could actually use displacement, look again would probably be pretty cool, but there just isn't a great way to get to that except for maybe in PvP, or if you just want to completely sacrifice other abilities when you're doing solo content. But slippery slinging, alter time, if you're going to use it now you could cancel aura alter time and really just then use it as a 40% speed boost instead of getting teleported back. Or it just means that you have a little extra speed while you're trying to do something before getting teleported back. Shifting sands. This now makes your shifting power an actual DPS cooldown. In addition to its reduction of other cooldowns, it's now going to essentially create a splinter storm, because you'll see on that last talent, every 8 splinters is 1 splinter storm. So this impacts your rotation to now where instead of doing shifting power at the end of Siphon Storm when your buffs have fallen off, it's actually going to be one of the first things you do inside Touch the Magi. You'll see in the rotation. Just a buff. I think that one's pretty straightforward. This one, Spellfrost Teachings. This is probably the coolest hero talent, at least for Spellslinger. I don't know how it compares to everything else. I think it looks really awesome, especially in AoE, because what it does is whenever you're firing off splinters, it gives you a chance to fire off another orb. So it's similar to Orb Barrage, except it's attached to your splinters rather than your barrage. And so it just looks really cool. If I can catch it in a clip, there's a chance you could just be firing off a whole bunch of orbs in a row, and I think that adds more to the idea of actually being a spell slinger, is when you're against slinging a bunch of orbs. And then the last one, the capstone of it, is Splinter Storm. Whenever you get 8 or more splinters, you're going to do a Splinter Storm. This used to do a crap ton of damage. They have reduced it. It also used to generate clear casting. It was 100% chance to generate clear casting. Then they reduced it to 20% because you're getting Splinter Storm a lot. And now they have taken it away completely. Ideally, they add that back in at least somewhat, since your splinter generation is directly tied to Nether Precision, which is then indirectly tied to clear casting. So it'd be nice to have some of that kind of built into it, so it can build on itself. But that's it for the talents of Splinter Storm. It is, again, a fun hero talent to play. If it gets tuned competitively with Sunfury, it's a really nice option. Again, it's purple, doesn't have an orange bird. If you love the bird, then you'll never like Spellslinger, because there isn't anything big and flashy about Spellslinger. But if you stop and pay attention to the animations, or you love almost an infinite amount of orbs when you get some great gambling procs, then it's a really exciting one to play. But like I always do, we will talk through these fun single target and AoE rotations. I don't know why this still says Sunfury. It's not bait. It's the Spellslinger one. It just didn't want to change it up there. Before I go through those, I will talk about the opener and stuff on Wowhead. Wowhead, great place for a lot of information, right? There's a lot of really good stuff in here for either hero talents for Arcane. This is for the opener, and with Spellslinger, you will be playing high voltage and also in AoE for Sunfury, so that's why this is a toggle option here. The difference really is that you're always going to be sending missiles so that you get nether precision to enter Touch of the Magi. The difference is, with high voltage, you will also then generate an arcane charge so that you can get closer to 4, so that you will barrage into touch. So the difference would be, as you see, without high voltage, you're not barraging into touch. You're surging into touch. With high voltage, you will ideally be at 4 arcane charges. Notice it says only if you have 4, and ideally you are because of high voltage. Then you'll barrage into touch, which is, I think, what you're more familiar with as Arcane. And I'll say that Spellslinger plays more like the traditional Arcane that you're probably used to, with barraging into touch and then an AoE building up to 4 and sending barrage, whereas Sunfury is a bit different, especially in AoE, but they're, again, both very fun. There is a beautiful visual, again, nice macros and stuff. Sunfury up top, Spellslinger on bottom. Again, missiles, orb, barrage into touch if you have 4, right? And very nice depiction of when you'd use said trinkets if you have them, all right? And this is kind of a big note, and you'll see it in the rotation. If you have 1 stack and nether precision and you're casting Arcane Blast, you should Q barrage. That's it. There's no other factors to it in single target. Last stack and nether precision, Q barrage with blast. Doesn't matter if you have orb available, doesn't matter if you have missiles available, and the reason you do that is because, remember, consuming nether precision sends splinters. So if you only did blast, that's 4 splinters, because it's 2 per nether precision, math. Whereas if you blast, and barrage, that's 6. So you got 6 splinters out of your 2 nether precision. Hooray! It's probably why Blizz didn't really love the double dipping stuff, but I digress. And then during Surge, right, Surge doubles it. That means Blast, Barrage generates 12 splinters. So essentially, in Surge, every clear casting, you're going to generate a Splinter Storm. Which is, again, why they took away the fact that Splinter Storm then generates clear casting, because it's an endless loop. Again, love for them to add that back in, because it does feel like it's starved for clear casting sometimes, whereas Sunfury can have an infinite amounts of it, especially due to Arcane Soul. But again, please utilize Wowhead or Icy Vein, pick your poison, whichever one you prefer. Ask questions in the Mage Discord, but there's just a lot of great helpful tools on those websites, and these get updated as information changes. So if something totally is reverted or changed from how things are here, Wowhead would be a great place to check. Okay, so then as for the written stuff, I will say I am using beta because beta still has the tier set. It's open, it's active, and it still has the tier set. Whereas on live, on retail, I wouldn't have access to the tier set, so I can't show you how to interact with tuition procs or what it looks like. As for the Spellslinger single target rotation, the biggest change that's going to probably be the hardest thing to get used to is that first one. The most important one, casting shifting power during Touch of the Magi. So in a sample rotation in that opener, you would missiles, orb, surge, barrage into touch, and then shifting power. You can blast barrage to consume that last nether precision and then shifting power, but one of the first things you're going to do inside is shifting power. The other stuff, all right, if you get a time anomaly proc Arcane Surge, so again, time anomaly can proc Arcane Surge, you'd use it if that happens, or if evocation is going to be up in 20 seconds, right? So if there's 20 seconds or more, right, left on evocation, you could use it. From what I've seen, just from how I've been playing, most of the time I always end up just using it inside that big burn, because by the time shifting power ends up being up again, there's like 8 seconds left or maybe 10 seconds left on evocation. So I would be burning a few seconds of reduction that I could do there. The idea of it though being though if you're on a fight where the timing is a bit different, right? Maybe there's some intermissions where your cooldowns get changed or something like that. Just to know those are some good times to use it. But ideally, to make it simple, most of the time I'm just using it inside of my big bird. Cast Arcane Barrage on your last stack of Nether Precision, or if Arcane Tempo is about to expire. The only reason Arcane Tempo would be about to expire is if you've been starved for clear casting, but again, there isn't any caveat of Arcane Harmony stacks, or if you have Orb, or if you have another clear casting. It's literally just, if you're on your last stack of Nether Precision, Barrage. Again, for the purpose of creating more splinters. Cast Arcane Blast with Nether Precision. That's a regular single target rule. Cast Arcane Missiles with clear casting and clip it. Again, that just means queue up another spell before the channel's over. The only exception being when you have Aether Attunement, go ahead and let that one full channel. Yay. Orb whenever you have less than 2 charges. Blast, Barrage if you're out of mana. Okay, pretty straightforward. The Sunfury list is a little longer. The tick marks on the left is just kind of denoting, hey, that's different than what you do in AoE. And the little space up top is because there's an extra rule for AoE that takes priority. And we'll talk about AoE now. Cast Arcane Blast once during Touch the Magi for Magi Spark. So typically what that looks like for me, you're doing the opener, Barrage into Touch, and then it is Blast Barrage to consume that last stack of Nether Precision and to make sure I've at least cast Blast once instead of Magi Spark. That is again to make sure that you utilize the full damage of Magi Spark, which only happens if you blast, barrage, into missiles. It is not listed as a priority in single target because it's understood that you're just going to be doing that. If you weren't blasting inside of your Touch of the Magi window, yeah, I don't know what you're doing, right? Because it's here. If you have nothing else to do, you're going to be blasting. That's not necessarily listed on here. There's not the rule of if you have nothing else to do, blast. So they just need to make sure, hey, do that. And then guess what? Shifting power, right? So typical thing, barrage, touch, blast barrage on your last stack, another precision, and then shifting power. Hooray! And then it plays a lot like more traditional AoE Arcane, with the exception of now you will use missiles to build charges. So if you're thinking about it compared to Dragonflight, it's going to look really, really similar. The 3 things that would be different is blasting when you get into touch. You didn't used to do that before, or didn't care to. Shifting power when you get into touch. You used to do that at the end of Siphon Storm. Now you're going to do it for its damage, right? And the fact that it generates splinters. And then it would be using missiles to generate arcane charges, right? Rather than using that on Arcane Explosion. And then Orb when you have less than 2 charges, and then Arcane Explosion if you have nothing else. So that is where this one will play a lot closer to that traditional AoE Arcane of I'm gonna use Arcane Explosion to build charges. If I get a clear casting proc, I'm going to missiles. That's it. And then when I get to 4 charges of barrage, I'm gonna send it. Right? And ideally you shouldn't have to worry about Arcane Tempo running out because you're gonna be barraging so much. It also has a nice little note in that if you don't have any charges but you do have an intuition proc, it's okay to just send it dry, right, without any charges. Hooray. But AoE Spellslinger is pretty fun. Again, if you get lucky on the gambling and just start sending orbs after orbs after orb, it's pretty cool. Hopefully all of that will make sense once you see it. Again, how I always do things is I show you the Slo-mo rotation and talk over it, and then I show you just it at full speed. And I always encourage you to kind of predict what you think will be happening next, and if it didn't happen next like you thought it would, refer back to the priority list, or maybe I just messed up. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think I get this perfect. You may see a part in here, at least in the full playthrough of the rotation, where I accidentally barrage twice in a row. That's no secret tech or hidden technique or anything like that. It's just me accidentally spamming barrage twice. And I'll use this moment to say that in Arcane, you can't really screw up majorly unless you don't align your cooldowns correctly and or just don't cast anything during your Touch of the Magi window. So let's go through this nice and slow, and you'll see over here on the left, right, it'll show you what I'm casting. So if you can't tell visually, you can see it there too. and it does go in slow motion, so it's kind of nice and slow. This is the pre-pull stuff, right? Evocation into missiles, orb, and lust. Then you're going to surge and barrage into touch because you have 4 charges. That's the difference in the Spellslinger Opener. And the new thing, as soon as I've finished doing my touch, is shifting power, right? You want to make sure you get that off. The splinters are going to fly everywhere because there's target dummies everywhere. But that's kind of the new thing to grasp onto. That and every last nether precision, you're blast, barraging, right? So you can see I did a blast barrage with my last one. That purple stuff is was a intuition proc. Yeah, that's it. Blast, barrage. That bar on the left side there is just the launch for the Splinter Storm. It has nothing. It's just there visually. That little tick on the top there means the splinters did damage. And then you can see the splinter counter, so there's going to be a Splinter Storm that it hits. But it's just missiles, blast, and then on the last stack is blast barrage. Voila! And then rinse, wash, repeat. There was the time I accidentally barraged twice in a row. But blast, and here's where I kind of messed up being a little late into my touch window, but still worked out. That's it for the single target thing, right? The main thing is knowing you do shifting power during your Touch of the Magi opener. But I think the coolest part of Spellslinger is an AoE when you generate a lot of orbs, and it happens during the opener and other times throughout. And you can see when you watch it live that my reaction is like, my brain is exploding. And again, I won't say I played AoE perfectly, but let's just kind of go through as slow as possible the AoE rotation. Opener is going to look really, really similar to your single target. Evocation, right? We did mirror images, evocation, missiles and orb, slowly, and lust. And then you're going to surge, barrage into touch. I might blast barrage right after. This time I do shifting power, right? You just want to then make sure that you at least blast. So I'll blast barrage here after shifting power is over. Blast, barrage. And then there goes a whole bunch of orbs. One of those was mine, one of them was not, right? Some of it's orb barrage. There goes just a crap ton of orbs, right? It's awesome. That's the coolest part of Spellslinger for sure. But you're just trying to, their time I accidentally sent a 0 charge barrage, but you're just trying to build up to 4 charges. You'll use your missiles to get to 4 charges if you have them. If you don't have it, you can use orb. If you have neither, you'll use Arcane Explosion. So the trippy part for, there I go to use Arcane Explosion to build up my charges to send. And I got an orb barrage proc. That's what the green lines in the middle mean. Yeah, the trippy part again is that you could just start firing off orbs because of the splinters. Splinters doing damage can fire orbs because of Spellfrost teachings. So if you're not positioned the right way, woo, you can pull a whole lot of mobs. This one I have to try to remember to do blast, and I think I get it here. If not, there might have been a time. Okay, yeah, there might have been a time where I blasted twice. But again, as long as you're getting blast in there once during your Touch of the Magi windows. But that's it. Right? Build up to 4 charges like you're used to. Launch a 4 charge barrage. The exception is going to be you're going to be firing off a crap ton of orbs. So don't feel like you have to like try to time that up and play that part perfectly. You know, it's just something that happens. If you can catch it, right? Maybe if you can be far enough away to see that you've launched an orb and can fire your barrage before it hits, cool. But other than that, that's it. I'll leave this and the single target rotation playing at full speed at the end. But again, the coolest part of Spellslinger is when you're just firing off like 50,000 orbs. I hope this has been helpful for you. If not, ask more questions in the comments or in Mage Discord. Have fun in the War Within.